Hello, and welcome to Talk Art. I'm Sally Rayn, and I'll be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open our studios to the public. For more information, you can go to the website svos.org. Our guest is Ruth Waters, a sculptor whose works include beautiful abstract hardwood sculptures. She is also the founder and director of the Peninsula Museum of Art in Burlingame. She's here to demonstrate her wood carving techniques. Welcome, Ruth.
Well, thank you, Sally. I'm delighted to be here. And just for beginners, I brought 2 small pieces that I usually take to schools when I do demos because the wood is so silky to the touch. And I think it's okay to touch. It's essential.
Well, yeah.
Now, the piece you're holding is an impressionist version of a cat. And what's significant about it is that it is carved in a piece of Macassar ebony. Now, Macassar ebony is something you will not find locally. And it is an ebony variety that grows in the Macassar Straits off of the east coast of Africa. And nowadays, it's very, very difficult to actually get these fine, exotic, tropical woods.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes. It's beautiful. It looks almost like tiger's eye, like the stone.
Oh, yes.
Very layered.
Yes. And if you feel it, it's a very fine-grained wood. Now, I brought this piece along because I was given a piece of a persimmon tree. And a persimmon tree is a relative of ebony. So I thought, aha, a gorgeous wood. Well, it's very nice wood, but I like the form. But it's not a pretty wood, not like the Macassar ebony.
Definitely a different color.
My solution was, when I finished it, to take it to the bronze foundry and ask them to make a mold and cast it in bronze. And so I did, and they did. And it's right behind you.
So that's this one here
Yes.
on this beautiful stand.
There you are.
Very nice.
And I know that's not the color you expect from bronze,
No.
but the patina artist who works for the foundry does exquisite work, and that is his personal special formula.
Oh, nice.
So who knows how he does it. I watched him do it, and I couldn't tell you. He just sprays this and turns it and sprays something else and sprays, and all of a sudden it looks like that.
Well, it's beautiful.
So,
really.
I'm very pleased with it. But you feel how silky that is.
Oh, yes. So how do you get it so silky?
Oh, you sand forever.
Sanding.
It doesn't just happen.
Oh, no.
But it only happens with very fine-grained, closed-grained, wonderful woods. Like oak would not feel like this.
No.
Just different. Just different. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Just briefly, how did you get involved with carving?
Well, I was a Stanford student and graduate, but I was not an art major. And I took a couple of elementary drawing and composition classes, but when I tried to take the sculpture class as a senior, they wouldn't let me in because I was not an art major.
Oh, no.
So, anyway,
well,
so
little
then
did they know.
I was out working for Sunset Magazine, and one weekend I was up in San Francisco bumming around the galleries, and one on Sutter Street, I remember walking in, and of course it was all paintings, and I turned around to leave, and here was a nice big sculpture carved in wood, and I looked at that and said, I can do that. So I tracked down tools and started out.
Wow.
So, you know, innocent and
And you've
not
been
knowing any better.
doing it ever since, and you do beautiful
that's
work.
a long time ago.
So you brought some images of your studio and some of your larger sculptures that are there.
Yes.
So let's take a look at those now.
You know, I brought a few that look large, but these are a lot bigger. And we'll get a close-up of the one in the middle there. It's called the Whirlwind. The one on the right is made of a Modesto ash wood, and it's about 8 feet tall.
Wow.
And on the walls behind, I do some painting, but I don't consider myself a painter. But the one in the middle there that kind of looks sort of mushroomy when you see it, it's behind me over here somewhere. Uh, what I found particularly interesting about it is that the log had been a cherry tree that was grafted. You know how they graft different
Right.
fruits on?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a cherry tree, and I can see where the cherry tree was allowed to have one major branch to stay cherries, but the other three branches were grafted to peach and plum and apricot.
Interesting. So
And
different color woods inside one
yes,
piece.
but you see the DNA is correct because they're all stone fruits, so that the grafts would take. Like you can graft apples and pears together because they have the same DNA for, we think about the insides of the seeds and things.
Right. So when you create these, you start with a tree trunk and then
Oh,
you,
yeah.
what is your technique to get it to look like that? I mean, do you
Well,
start with the idea?
Yeah, strip the bark off, see if I've got any obvious problems. You always want to find out the bad news first. And then I think about it until I have a clear image in my mind. And I get the chalk out and make some lines on it, and then I start carving. But I have to know where I'm going before I start carving, because once it's cut, it's gone.
Right.
There's no going back. It's all subtractive. So that's the way it is. And then it's carve, 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 and make a mess. And, and eventually you get to where you're rasping and filing and smoothing down the surface, because the tools, you'll see in a minute, the tools I use, they're curved, they're called gouges. They're chisels, but they're called gouges because they cut a curved surface. So there you can see some more of the studio. And on the left, halfway down the scene there on the left, is the twisted pillar, which is behind me, and you'll see it shortly. We brought that one in. And that is carved out of podocarpus wood. And a podocarpus tree, you probably don't know the name of it, but
No.
it's a commonly used landscape and street tree.
Oh.
And they were trimming back a huge, huge tree in the neighborhood. And so I said, can I have that? And they kind of looked at me strangely. It wasn't the Davy Tree Company guys. They all know me. So it was just a block from my art center, and I went and got my hand truck and trundled it up and picked up the log and took it back to the studio. So now that one is just outside in the hallway, and it's quite large. It's carved in madrone. It's the darkest color madrone I've ever had.
That's beautiful.
But the theme is the family, because there's three abstracted figures, two that have a suggestion of a head up at the top, and the third that you can just barely see in the middle.
Right.
That's the child who has grown up and is leaving, but still attached, because you are always connected to your family. So I like people. I'm interested always in relationships and interactions and things like that, and I've returned to that theme in a number of ways. Yeah. Well, now here we're looking along one side of the studio back towards the workroom.
Sculptures in your studio.
Yes, well, too many. But hidden along the side there is a piece that you'll see eventually called The Demagogue. And it's sitting here. I don't know if you can get a shot of that yet, but
We will.
it's carved in black walnut. It was originally a three-piece sculpture that I called Portrait of Power.
Oh.
And I finished it, I didn't like it, I took it apart, saved the central part, and resurrected it as the Demagogue. And you can't see that now, okay. What we're looking at now is in my workshop, and on the bench is a piece I'm working on for a wall sculpture, and it's carved in Brazilian rosewood, which is one of the three hardest, densest woods known in the world.
Is that all from one piece?
It was one huge slab.
Wow.
And it's carved. I'm now sanding, and that the finishing takes as long as the carving does.
Wow.
It just is a long process. But I did leave several parts of the design with the carved surface, because it kind of pleases me that people can see that and feel that an actual human hand actually carved
Right.
the wood. So.
And there's your
And
workbench.
that's the workbench with the piece on it that I brought for a demo tonight. And it's an odd little piece. It was part of a stack of logs that were donated, and I have no idea even, let me go here.
Yes.
I don't even know who gave them to us. They dumped them and left.
Well,
But
you're going to give us a demonstration of your techniques now, so let's take a look at
so,
Ruth in action.
okay, I'm on now.
Yes.
See, there's the twisted pillar. So these are the tools. I use this one, the number 5 gouge. Gouge meaning it's a curved cutting edge. Probably does 85% of the carving work. And my mallet is a lignum vitae mallet, which means it's heavy. I've been working with this for probably 25, 30 years, and it's showing some wear, but not a whole lot. And are you ready? I'm noisy. Now what I'm doing with this piece is I'm rounding this surface. It's an odd piece. It was a thrown away slab. This will be the flat. I'm going to keep this flat. This side has to be rounded back to the flat side. And the theme is terra infirma, or sick earth. And at the museum, we have a show coming up in a couple months. I think it starts in May, called Terra Infirma, about ecological and environmental issues. So when I found this piece, you see how this is a split here,
right.
There's flaws here, and look at if you were slicing open the earth, and you would find serious issues, because we have volcanoes,
Right.
among other things, volcanoes and
Plate
earthquakes and
tectonics.
violent stuff. Well, this poor thing will, and see here, there's disease, critical stuff.
So your sculpting part of it, do you already know what it's going to look like at the end?
Pardon me?
Do you know what it's going to look like at the end?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. This will all be very smooth, curved back to here, and I'm pretty sure the wood is English brown oak. It has the very distinctive oak configuration of the wood fibers themselves. But it was a very big old tree. It was sick. That's why it was cut. You can see this, and streaking in here. And then, of course, this was where it divided. It would have grown like this. So this would have been a huge trunk going here, and the main trunk going up here.
So you become intimately familiar with each piece of wood and every grain and where it's going, how it works together.
So
Very
and here you can see
interesting.
with the disease here. So I'll be working on this for a while. I don't know if you've picked it up and lifted it, but it's heavy, it's dense, it's
Right.
not a simple wood to work with. But when it's finished, I think it'll be kind of spectacular and on a very contemporary theme.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have to deal with these issues. But this will all get smoothed out and curved back and
So what
polished and
tools
pretty.
would you use to smooth it after the gouge?
Oh, smoothing, yes. Well, to go from the carved surface to a sanding surface, I use Sureform planes. And think of a cheese grater. It slices, little tiny slices off, makes a mess. But because the tools have curved surfaces, it means you've got this kind of a surface.
Right.
So you want to get that all down flat and smooth. And then it's sanding. And I have my piece of leather, and I'll start with usually 60 grit open coat garnet paper. And it just, forever. So I'll go through 5 or 6 different layers of sandpaper to get down to a silky smooth, lovely finish.
So
and then it's laurel linseed oil.
what does your sandpaper stroke look like? Because
Is
I've-
what?
What does it look like when you're sandpapering? Can you show us the techniques that you use a little bit?
Well, oh, true. I'm taking some so for granted. I didn't even think about it. But you always sand with the grain. With the grain meaning the direction in which the tree grew. So we'll make believe that this is ready to sand. You see, I will have already taken some of the, I will have smoothed it down.
Right.
And then I'll start with the sandpaper.
And this is many hours of work.
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah. It's, and then it goes through to very, very fine sandpaper. That there's a 220. When I finish the 220, then I'm ready to oil the whole thing.
What type of oil do you use?
Hand rubbed linseed oil, raw linseed oil, not the boiled. And it's and then some woods take only one coat, some take 4 or 5 to build up a nice glowing finish. The one over there is looking pretty good. No, I have to keep track of what you can see on the monitor there. But it's a long, slow process. There's really no way of speeding it up.
Right.
People always ask me, well, don't you use power tools? Well, power tools are wonderful for soft woods and for cutting straight lines and polishing flat surfaces.
Right.
Now, show me the straight lines and the flat surfaces.
There are none.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So that's what I do. But I hope that people can come to our open studios because we'll all be in our studios working away and
Yes.
greeting people and being happy to see them.
So let's take a look at some of your completed sculptures. You brought some
Okay.
more images for us. Transcendence. Tell us about this one.
Now let's see, that's
What type of wood is it?
that one, that's the 8-foot tall Modesto ash. Now on the left is, what is that? I can't see it clearly enough which one it is. Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, that was a koa wood piece, one of the Intimacy series. And back behind is mostly paintings.
So the one that's curved behind it, how do you get that to balance? Is that something that you have to put into the design when you're
Yeah.
carving? And you have that already in mind. I'm amazed that you have such a
Well-
plan for each piece.
Yeah, you have to. There's nothing casual about it.
Right. No, I understand. Once if you make a mistake, it's a smaller sculpture.
Yeah. Well, it's a different world, and I've come to realize that it is different. And most of my students come to me because they understand this. Once in a while, I have someone whose mind doesn't work that way, and it's very difficult for them.
Yeah,
But
I can imagine.
that's the way it is. So, yeah. So let's look at another one. Oh, that one. Okay. Now that's olive wood, and that's in the lower floor display area of the Burlingame Library. I call it blossoming. So it was the bottom of an olive tree with where all these branches went out, and that was fun to do.
How big is that across approximately?
Pardon me?
How big is it
Oh.
across?
Oh, it's about 3 feet across.
Wow. And that was from one big trunk.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was, oh, okay. That's the demagogue. That's the one that started out as 3 pieces, and I called it Portrait of Power. But what I really liked was the middle piece, and I kept that. And it's black walnut. You can't quite see all the details, but the ears and the eyes are empty holes. The mouth is protruding as if it's yelling.
Yes.
And the whole center of the log is empty. It was
Like a demagogue.
well, yes.
And it's not smooth like your
No,
other sculptures. It's
it
a
was
very
just
different
carved.
style.
Yeah, carved, and then I just went over it lightly with the very, very, very fine sandpaper, just taking any little sharp edges off, and oiled it. But black walnut is a lovely wood to work with. And it used to be that you could drive up Highway 99, way back when that was the only way you could go north.
Right.
And there's miles of walnut orchards. And the walnut trees, the English walnut stalk was grafted onto black walnut rootstock because it was hardier.
Right.
And they grafted it about 4 or 5 feet off the ground.
Oh.
Well, that was wonderful because when the tree got very, very old and they cut it down, you had all that wonderful black walnut wood. Now they do their grafting 2 inches off the ground.
Oh, not
Fat
the same.
chance for,
Right.
so it's gotten very hard to find. And that's a fun one. That's Intimacy 1, the first one I did on that theme. And there's another shot of that shows a little more of the detail. Yeah, you see how the two forms are interrelated.
Yes.
Okay, well that was chosen by a curator for an exhibition at the Rockefeller Center Gallery in New York City. I thought, oh boy.
Yay.
And then I got a call from the curator, and she said, you aren't going to believe this, but the gallery manager says your piece is too erotic to show in New York. And,
And it's just two wooden twists.
Yeah.
That's so
anyway,
funny.
people see what they're looking for.
I guess so.
And so, but I thought, well, that must be a pretty good piece. And so I took it to the foundry, and they made a mold. And I have sold 7 of the bronzes from that, and I have the 8th one in my studio.
Wonderful.
And that was the beginning of a dynasty of intimacy pieces. There's Intimacy 2.
So this is a bronze as well.
Now that was carved in a maple tree and cast in bronze. And there's Intimacy 4. And that's a wall piece. It's about 5 feet tall and carved in Honduras mahogany. And you're probably used to seeing Honduras mahogany at very high-end furniture.
Yes.
Yeah. So as you can see, I like people. I think relationships are very important, and I have fun with it too.
So when you're doing a wall sculpture like this, is there a different approach that you take? You must start with a thinner piece of wood, for example?
Well, I start with a slab.
Slab instead of a trunk.
But I still have to visualize what I want. And then the next step then is to pick up the piece of chalk and start to make lines on the wood. And then I start carving.
So you do sketch out at first?
Well, sort of. I don't use paper because, well, this is closer to drawing than the logs. But with a log, you see, that's 3-dimensional, and paper is 2-dimensional.
Right. It's hard to.
So it doesn't accomplish much to draw on paper. But I'll take the chalk and work with the whole log all the way around.
So you have a lot of experience carving all of these beautiful woods.
Oh yeah.
Does each wood have its own personality or texture, and you have to know how to work each one?
You have to relate to it. Yeah, it's absolutely, they're different. Just different. Well, look at how different.
Right, they're different,
these two are.
But when you're carving them, do you use a different technique?
Well, and these two are both very fine-grained, sleek woods. Compared to oak, which is open-grained.
Right.
And, well, and even mahogany is open-grained. They feel different. You know, when people come into my studio, if there's children, the adults will say, now don't touch, don't touch. And I'll say, no, wait a minute. Clean skin oil is good for the wood.
Oh.
Peanut butter and jam, not so.
No.
And so they run across the hallway and wash their hands and come back and say, okay, can I touch? Because touch is one of the 5 basic senses.
Oh, yeah.
It's very important. I want them to learn to be able to touch and feel and understand the difference in how the different woods feel. It's just...
Yeah. And so when you're using your tools, do you use them any differently at all with the different woods?
No, it's just that, well, yes, I do. For the very hardwoods, I have a heavier mallet.
Oh,
And so that gives, with a strike, there's more inertial weight hitting.
right.
Yeah.
So which wood would be the hardest? I don't know.
Well, the Gabon ebony, lignum vitae, and Brazilian rosewood are tied for top.
Oh, so that huge
Yes.
flat wall
Yes.
structure
Yes.
is the hardest.
Yes. And I used my
Big
big
mallet.
mallet for that one.
And it looks so delicate.
Well,
So tell us where people can see your art and what upcoming shows you have.
okay. The best place is to come to the Peninsula Museum of Art up in Burlingame. If you know where the Mills Peninsula Hospital is, you're close. This heads straight towards the railroad tracks on Trousdale. And when you spot the Burlingame Police Department, find one of the two driveways into the parking area,
Right.
and we're inside the block behind the police department. And
And-
that's a pretty safe place for an art museum.
And for you have big signs out for
Oh,
the
yeah.
open studios,
yeah.
and the big yellow SVOS signs will
Yeah.
direct people there.
Oh, and we
And
love it.
when people come to the Peninsula Museum of Art, what will they see at an open studios?
Well, you'll see, of course, the 5 museum galleries will be gorgeous, but also we have 29 professional artists in studios, 29 studios, with 30, one sharing deal, 30 artists in there, plus a classroom, and you can walk through all of that. We
All
have
of that.
19,000 square feet of art.
It's a beautiful building. I've been there several times. I love to go there.
Yeah, it's
And your studio is part of that, and you'll
Yes.
be there displaying your art.
well, and the museum, of course, is a 501c3 nonprofit, and the art in the museum galleries, on the exhibitions, that's not for sale, although we make sure that people can get in touch with the artist if they would like to buy something,
Okay.
but
Well,
not through the museum.
your art is phenomenal.
Well,
Thank you so much for coming to Talk Art and showing us your work.
Well, I'm delighted, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at Silicon Valley Open Studios.
Studios, me
Party time.
too. Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much, Sally.
You're welcome.